We're going to be talking to James Matthewson now, who's a former Labour Party spokesman. James, thanks for joining us on Talk.
Hi, Russell. Pleasure to be with you.
Yes, indeed. No, thank you very much, sincerely. OK, what should we talk about? Let's talk about Angela Rayner and her edict, which is the redistribution of migrants around Britain. Is that the solution to our migrant crisis, do you think?
I think it's about tackling the issues, about talking about it. I think it's welcome to hear from a Labour politician to talk about immigration, because there's been fear in the party for many, many years about talking about immigration at all, because there wasn't a clear direction, there wasn't an acknowledgement of this as an issue, and a bit similar to Brexit, it was the kind of thing you want to bury your head in the sand about, because if you don't have a position to talk about, or you don't fully understand the issues because you're in, multicultural hubs like London or kind of city centres, and people like Angela understand that there are people in the country, because of people in Angela's family, as there are in mine, people in Angela's friend groups who have concerns and have questions about immigration. Even if you're pro-immigration, as I am, you should be able to have those conversations. So
But Angela Rayner in this context wasn't talking about immigration and it being a problem, which, yes, you're right, the Labour Party for the first time ever, I think, are now saying that legal and illegal migration to Britain is too much. I mean, she's talking about the solution, or part of the solution being that we'll simply redistribute migrants more equally around the country. I mean, it's kind of migrant socialism rather than financial socialism, isn't it? I mean, that's not a solution. I mean, what does she mean? She's rather indicating that the problem won't be solved, despite what Keir Starmer says about smashing the gangs in some far-flung place. But don't worry about it. We'll make sure that the spread of migrants is equal and even. That's not a solution. That's a logistic.
Yeah, but it's not a policy proposal from the Labour Party. It's something.
Well, she's the deputy leader, though. She's the deputy leader.
She is the deputy leader, you're right, but it's something that she's talking about and she's having conversations about. She's also not the Home Secretary, who's the person who will decide what happens with that.
I guess so, but don't we want to hear... I mean, I concede, you're absolutely right. The Labour Party are talking about migration being too much, and for the first time. But they are on a sticky wicket, I guess, because, of course, they have a huge Muslim vote to placate, which I guess is why Angela Rayner went to a mosque recently to beg for their vote. But how do they square that circle? How do they talk about what most of Britain is talking about? They say 70% of people in Britain think that there's a problem with excess migration, versus the fact that they also need to placate the Muslim vote.
What are you on about placating the Muslim vote for? They're not the only people who come to this country.
No, I'm just saying that there might be some in the Muslim fraternity that are offended by Labour talking about capping migration. So I'm just asking how they square the circle.
I've met people who follow the religion of Islam who are anti-immigration. It's not that straightforward. Yeah. It's not that simple.
But it's not Labour's natural home, is what I'm saying, is it? It's not their natural place politically.
You're right in that regard. When it comes to values and core values, the Labour Party is a party that supports migration as a concept and supports immigration, because a world where people
there you have it. There you have it.
Where people, but there is no shame in that at all.
Hang on a sec. So what are you suggesting here, James, then, that everything we're hearing from Keir Starmer and indeed now Angela Rayner with regard to stopping this surge in migration actually isn't born of any truth or authenticity, because they're the natural party of open border immigration?
No, and I didn't say open border immigration.
You kind of did. You said that they're more comfortable with being a party of welcoming migrants.
Yes. Yeah, that there is immigration, there is migration, regardless of whether it's open border or not. It is a positive thing. Our NHS is absolutely filled to the brim and supported entirely by migration. There are professions across this country that would not exist without migration.
James, no one's saying that migration is bad. Immigration, I think, is the backbone of Britain. I think it's a wonderful thing. My wife is an immigrant. My wife is an immigrant.
Wonderful,
what we're talking about here is the excess migration that this country has befallen over the last few years under Rishi Sunak, and indeed since Tony Blair decided to open the floodgates in 1997.
Yes, but what you've just said is you're equating the fact that the Labour Party at its core and its core values and principles seem to be those of yours, which you've said, there isn't a problem with migration in principle.
No, I'm saying there should be controlled immigration. No, hang on. There's black and white and there's grey in the middle, James. I'm saying we shouldn't be saying no to all immigration, but we also shouldn't open the floodgates to let anybody and everybody in, which seems to be the case right now. The balance is in the middle. It should be controlled and selective, so we can decide based on ability and contribution who comes comes in. That is not Labour's natural position. Their natural position, as per being aligned with the EU and generally being at a party of immigration, is to let everybody in. I'm asking, I guess, let me put it a different way. Can we believe that Labour have changed its spots?
It's not about changing your spots.
Well, it is, because you're trying to convince the electorate that Keir Starmer's going to do something about our immigration problem. Because 70% of people agree with me that it's a problem.
That's his policy. And if you believe him on whether he is going to deliver his policies or not, that's the only question.
James, you're a representative. Kind of, just convince me. Convince me that he's not talking out both sides of his mouth at the same time.
I'm not a representative. I'm not even a party member anymore.
You're a former Labour Party spokesman, James.
Yes, yeah, worked for the party.
Do you support Keir Starmer in his current role in the Labour Party?
Yes.
There you go. So answer the question. So can we believe him, or is he talking out of both sides of his mouth on immigration? Because some of us think he is.
I think you can believe him entirely on what he's saying, and it's not even things that
because he never changes his mind.
They're not. Well, people have to change their mind, Russell. That's how the world
not every week.
People have to be flexible with their positions. They have to be sensible, and they have to change minds. If we want to win hearts and minds, which I want to do, I want to see a progressive world with my progressive values at the core of that. I recognise that they're not naturally everybody's values. Yeah. How am I going to make space for that? I'm going to understand that people change their mind and people learn and people change over time. That's how the world works.
Look, I think, but also, James, but we need to be convinced that Labour have not just changed their mind. And look, I'll give you the benefit of the doubt. Let's assume that he's changed his mind because he sees that circumstances are now different and now he wants to control immigration. But he also needs to have a credible plan to do so. And I don't think many are convinced that because of his role at as Director of Public Prosecutions, where he, helped infiltrate a few terrorist gangs 25 years ago, whatever it was, that somehow that means he's going to smash all of the 500 immigration gangs that are plaguing Britain and other countries indeed with illegal immigration. I mean, the actions that he is, or the rhetoric, what he's saying he's going to do, and the action, I think are two very different things in terms of plausibility.
I think you're right. It's interesting. Let's see. Let's give it a chance. Let's see what he does. Because for me, I'm not voting for him because I love him. I'm not voting for him because I think he's the saviour of Britain.
He's no Blair, is he?
As Dennis Skinner, the beast of Bolsover, who you'll remember well, he used to put it that, it's no Rolls-Royce, but it's the best vehicle in town for political change in Britain, and that's the Labour Party. That's what it is. It's a wider movement. It's a chance to change things in Britain, and we need change right now.
And why don't you think people are behind Starmer as a visionary, as a leader, like they were Blair?
I think there's a question of charisma there, but do we want charisma?
Lack of,
yeah, probably. But do we want charisma to be the leading principle?
We want both, don't we? We want charisma and character and authenticity and vision. I think we want all of those things.
I disagree. I don't want charisma. I tell you who's got bags of charisma, according to people, is Donald Trump last night in the US presidential debate. And I couldn't think of anything worse for the safety of the world, for the safety and security of everybody.
Well, apart from Joe Biden, I suppose he might be worse, given that he probably doesn't know who he is.
Absolutely. I mean, there was not a shred of charisma there either, was there? And that's the danger.
Or cognitive sense, frankly. Let's, James, while you're on, let's talk about tax, because the other hole, I think, in Labour's approach, and I am trying to give them the benefit of the doubt, believe me, I am, because I'm no fan of the current Conservative government at all, but it's the question of tax. Now, I think if Keir Starmer and his front bench were very honest about tax, we could get behind what he's saying. But it seems to me that both in the manifesto and more what it doesn't say rather than what it says, and in the debates that Keir Starmer and Angela Rayner have been in, he's not giving the public a straight answer. And the question, by the way, that requires the straight answer is, will you increase taxes? So, very short, very straightforward question. Keir Starmer can't answer that question. Why not?
The answers I've seen to it are that they won't be putting taxes up on working people.
Well, that's not an answer. You know it isn't, James. Come on, don't be disingenuous.
I don't work for the party, Russell. I only hear what you've told me. That.
Well, what do you think, honestly? I mean, if I wasn't going to put taxes up at all, and I was a politician vying for your vote, do you know what I'd say to you, James? I promise I won't put any taxes up. Right, that's what I'd say.
I don't think
he's not saying that. So, in other words, because don't forget, we have this huge problem, I think, with politicians' authenticity and integrity. Not telling the truth, going back on things, and so on. I think we deserve a better answer as a populace of 35 million voters, where we're about to go to the polls and we actually don't know if the Labour Party that might be in power for 5 or 10 or 15 years are going to put taxes up. Do you think it's a rather fundamental question for Keir Starmer to be able to answer?
I think he's probably given himself flexibility because in government, obviously, things happen, events happen. I mean, the greatest example of that we've seen in recent years is the pandemic. There are wars likely to only be increasing from now on, and you see a geopolitical situation that's incredibly unstable. So I imagine they're not wanting to box themselves in. Now, they have done that significantly already with this triple lock promise, by saying we're not going to put tax up on X, Y, and Z, that triple lock on working people's taxes. So they've already taken that option off the table for themselves, which is welcome, I think, for the British
James, you might say not boxing them in. Some of us might say it's an excuse to be able to put taxes up and being disingenuous. Look, before we finish, let's talk about the news over the last 24 hours with regard to reform. What do you make of the allegations, the claims with regard to these seeming individuals within reform? Let's just say that have been rather colourful with the things that they've had to say.
Individuals is a funny word, because it is, isn't it? And this is the convenient thing for them. It's individuals. It's always individuals. Now, let me tell you what we saw last night as a great example of Nigel Farage and of the Reform Party and where we're headed in the UK, with them at the helm of anything.
I think they might be at the helm then, James.
No, I think they'll be at the helm of the Tory Party if Nigel Farage is elected to Parliament. That's the risk.
Interesting.
And they'll merge. So I do think that's a real risk. Now, the reason this is such a problem is because, as we've seen last night in the US presidential debate, Donald Trump is the perfect example. Somebody who's friends with Nigel Farage, somebody who's endorsed him. This is a man who is surrounded by bigots, by people who build their entire world.
When you say surrounded, no, hang on. These are people that Nigel Farage has said, I don't even know who these people are. One of them might even be a paid actor. It's alleged that one of them might be a paid actor that was being put up by Channel 4. It's
alleged. That's conspiracy, Russell.
But James, come on, to say that he is surrounded by bigots and racists, that's not right to say. Come on.
To deny and to say that it's all conspiracy. Yeah. This man builds his worldview on hatred and bigotry and division, and he always has. And sadly, in this country, as in many others, the same with the US, we have people in our society, people amongst us in our pubs, in our clubs, in our schools, in our workplaces, in our families, who are bigots, who unfortunately really love that language.
James, do you think Nigel Farage is a racist? James, do you think Nigel Farage is racist based on what evidence?
Without a doubt, Nigel Farage gets everything in his worldview. The dog whistles aren't even.
What has he said? Can you name one thing he said that's racist?
There aren't even dog whistles anymore.
Can you name one thing that he said that's racist?
The people that he surrounds himself with and everything that he does in his worldview.
James, can you name one thing that he said that's racist?
And division.
James,
further bigotry and division.
James, can you name one thing that he said that's racist?
Is events coordinator.
I feel like Jeremy Paxman here. James, can you name one thing that Nigel Farage has said that's racist?
Why are you getting away from it? Russell, I'm talking about his events
coordinator. No, you just said that he's a racist. I asked you a question, James. Is he a racist? You said absolutely, I believe he is. How is he a racist? What evidence have you got that he's a racist, James?
During Pride Month, saying that the LGBT...
James, let me ask you a different question. Have there ever been any racists in the Labour Party? Jeremy Corbyn, Diane Abbott.
Yes, there are racists in the Labour Party. There are racists.
So does that mean Keir Starmer's surrounded by racists? Does that mean Keir Starmer's surrounded by racists?
No, because it's about whether you use them to your political advantage.
What's the difference?
People like Nigel Farage have always existed.
Keir Starmer supported Jeremy Corbyn as Prime Minister, who was then thrown out the party for being a racist. So how's Keir Starmer any different to Nigel Farage?
Visions of racists.
James, I keep asking you questions you don't answer. James, how is Keir Starmer any different to Nigel Farage? He had to throw his former leader out for being a racist. And so Keir Starmer decided that he would surround himself around Jeremy Corbyn, knowing that he was an anti-Semite. How is that different?
So the people that Keir Starmer has around him, the entire function of the Labour Party, all of it, its core values are not based on hatred, they're not based on division. They're just simply not.
Well, Jeremy Corbyn being an anti-Semite, that's pretty hateful, isn't it?
Well, that's why he's not in the Labour Party anymore.
Yeah, but Keir Starmer backed him as Prime Minister not once, but twice.
Yes, but now he's not in the Labour Party.
How is that okay? Seems like double standards from the Labour Party to me, James.
We come back to this question again, Russell, of whether you can change your mind.
What about Diane Abbott saying, well, we'll keep going until we kind of, until we exhaust us. Diane Abbott saying that it's not possible to be racist towards Jewish people, apparently, because they're not worthy of having racism thrown at them.
Reform UK and the allegations of racism. Did you watch the footage?
I did. I've watched it several times. But
did you think, what do you
my
think
question is, but you've extended that, James, to say that these are people that are surrounding Nigel Farage, as if that his chief of staff and his candidates are all racist. And it's a bit much of a sweeping statement, I think, James, which you can't back up. When I ask you the question, name one thing Nigel Farage has said that's racist. Just one thing, ever, and you can't answer. You can't answer.
You have no interest in engaging in this segment about what you even want to talk about.
But you said it. I'm only asking you to qualify what you said, James. You said he's a racist. I said how. Give me some answers. Give me a bit of evidence, and you can't do that. I'm only challenging you on what you yourself said. I didn't make you say it. James, thanks for joining us. Fantastic as ever. Until next time, I guess.